Welcome to The Issue Is, Fox 11's new political show talking what's hot, what's important, what's affecting you. I'm Elex Michaelson. This week, The Issue Is the future of the Democratic Party. Dan Pfeiffer is with us. He was a top advisor to President Barack Obama. Now he's a co-host of the popular podcast Pod Save America. The issue is the Supreme Court. Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement will likely change the court and the nation for a generation. Are abortion rights now on the line? That and more with our panel. KABC Radio's John Phillips, television journalist Giselle Fernandez, and John Kobylt of John and Ken fame. The Issue Is starts right now.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Back in 2008, will.i.am went viral with this music video, quoting the Yes We Can speech of then-candidate Barack Obama. Well, our guest tonight helped craft that very message. Dan Pfeiffer would go on to serve as President Barack Obama's communications director and a senior advisor to the president. There he is inside the administration. He worked inside that administration alongside Jon Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor. And later, outside the administration, that same team created Pod Save America, one of the most successful podcasts in the country. Dan, now out with a new book. It's called Yes, We Still Can, Politics in the Age of Obama, Twitter, and Trump. Dan Pfeiffer, welcome to The Issue Is.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
being here. All right, let's start with the big issue of the week when it
Yes.
comes to politics, and that is the Supreme Court. Anthony Kennedy is resigning. A lot of liberals are freaking out. They feel like there's nothing that they can do to stop a conservative coming onto the court. Is there anything they can do to stop it?
Well, it's going to be very hard because Republicans control the Senate. If Mitch McConnell wants to hold this hearing, take a nominee, hold the hearing in a day, and put him up for a vote the next day, he can do that. But we have to fight. And we will be better off if we have the fight. My message to Democrats, and I think this is exactly what they're doing, is fight like hell. We have to make the country know what is at stake here, because there's going to be Republican senators who will be deciding to shift the balance of the court in a way that could overturn Roe versus Wade, gut workers' rights, voting rights. And so this is really going to be about raising a ruckus and letting people know, and maybe we can succeed.
And there was this front page of the Daily News, which of course was very... There you are. We are, you know what. I mean, what does this mean? Does this mean that Roe v. Wade is going down? Are you concerned about the future of this country? And if so, you're saying just to fight and lose?
Well, I think you fight to win. And this is going to come down to one vote in the Senate. In order to get this, if Democrats hold strong, in order to get this done, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Jeff Flake are going to have to be the ones to vote to decide to potentially overturn Roe versus Wade. And so we have to fight in the Senate, but we also have to, this is a reminder about why we have to win the elections, both the Senate, so we can make sure this never happens again, but also governor's races, state legislative races, because we can put in place state laws that can help protect women's reproductive freedom, voting rights, et cetera, to insulate at least some of our citizens from what might be the worst decisions of this court. If
Democrats win back the House, if they don't, is Nancy Pelosi still the Democratic leader?
As anyone who listens to the podcast knows, I'm out of the prediction game after getting 2016 wrong. I think I think if we do not win the House, I would not be surprised to see a big shakeup in the Democratic leadership. I will say, as someone who worked for President Obama when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, she is probably the greatest speaker who has ever served in that role. There would not be the Affordable Care Act. There would not be Wall Street reform. There would not be so many important pieces of progressive legislation without Nancy Pelosi. And if we're going to have the control of the Congress with Donald Trump as president, I feel pretty good with someone as savvy and smart as Nancy Pelosi in charge.
She's great at keeping the caucus together. She's great at raising money. She's also great at getting the other side very angry at her as well. Okay, let's talk about your old boss, which your book is about as well, Barack Obama. New York Magazine has this provocative headline saying basically, where is Barack Obama? Do you feel like he's doing enough? Because there's a lot of people on the left that feel like he's essentially walked out of public life and left us with President Trump.
I think you will see President Obama on the campaign trail this fall. He was out there campaigning for our Virginia gubernatorial candidate, who won, our New Jersey gubernatorial candidate, who won. He did robocalls and other efforts for Doug Jones, who won in Alabama. So he's going to be out where he is having the most impact. I get it. I understand why people are frustrated. I personally would feel better if I could just listen to one more Barack Obama speech. I'd feel good for a moment. But it's not going to change the state of our politics, of the state of the country, and move it in the more progressive direction. The thing I always know about Barack Obama is he's very strategic. And so he is going to speak out when he can have the most impact. Because if he was just out there responding to every Trump tweet, it would lose its power. So wait for the moment when he believes, and he's very often right about these things, he can have the most impact. I think you'll begin to see that with more frequency this fall.
So there are reports that President Obama is meeting privately with a lot of these people that may be running in 2020. Do you think that Joe Biden would be his favorite?
He and Biden are incredibly close. They say that they are brothers from another mother. That Barack Obama is an honorary Biden, if you will. I haven't talked about who he's going to support in the race or if he's going to support anyone. I just know he's very personally fond of Joe Biden, and no matter what Joe Biden does, he will be.
Is he running?
I don't know. He says he's thinking about it. Joe Biden. I'm from Delaware. Joe Biden's been my senator, my vice president, almost my entire life. He'd have a lot to say, and he may be the right candidate for the time, but we just don't know, because campaigns, in my view, is a matching of the person in the moment.
Right.
We just don't know what that moment is going to be like 2 years from now.
Speaking of a lot to say, you have a lot to say. Pod Save America, which you guys created, these Obama staffers, has become one of the most successful podcasts of all podcasts, speaking to millions of people. Are you surprised by that, and why do you think that is working?
I am surprised by that every time that anyone listens, let alone the numbers at which you refer to. I think the reason that some Americans have found it to be interesting and important to them is that it is different than what most political media is. We try to talk like normal humans, not use jargon. It's not a bunch of people yelling at each other. We try to be a smart, funny, authentic conversation about what's happening. But it's not just that. We also want to explain what's happening in the news from our perspective, people with experience, but also tell people what they can do to change the outcome of this country. It is entertainment for the purposes of activism.
Well, speaking of the book, it's a way to get to know you better, but we also play a game here to help you get to know you. It's called Personal Issues.
Okay.
So we put 30 seconds on the clock, and so we can get to know a little bit about you. You ready?
Yep.
Ready to have some fun?
Let's do it.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Usual Suspects.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Meal you cook the most?
Bacon and eggs.
Favorite comedian?
Kevin Hart.
Favorite author?
Cormac McCarthy.
Favorite Disneyland ride?
Space Mountain.
Favorite superhero?
Spider-Man.
One thing you'd bring to a deserted island?
My phone.
Best thing about being a Californian?
The weather.
Favorite meal?
Ramen.
Wow.
There you go.
That's somebody who's worked a lot of nights. Ramen is your favorite meal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Last question. Most important takeaway that you want people to take from your book?
I want people to know that it is in our control to make it so that that this era, the Trump era, is an aberration. It is a moment we will look back on in our politics with sadness, but it is only a moment. But it is up to us to make that reality happen.
As you would say, yes, we still can.
That's exactly right.
And speaking of that, I think we might have some music for that. Brings us back, right? Is that weird hearing that again?
It is. It is. I remember the day that we discovered that video. It blew us away.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here,
you.
Dan Pfeiffer. We appreciate it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a lot of the big issues of the week with our panel. We'll be right back with more of these issues.
We can. The opportunity and prosperity. Yes, we can.
Friday night, 4th of July, right around the corner. Welcome back to The Issue Is, talking about justice right there. That's Ziggy Marley on The Issue Is, this week's panel. KFI radio host John Kobylt of John and Ken fame, television journalist Giselle Fernandez, KABC Radio's John Phillips, all veteran broadcasters. Great to have all of you here. Our big first issue, the issue of the week, is the Supreme Court. Anthony Kennedy deciding to retire. CNN's Jeff Toobin talked about it this way.
You are going to see 20 states pass laws banning abortion outright, just banning abortion, and because they know that there are now going to be 5 votes on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. And abortion will be illegal in a significant part of the United States in 18 months.
Is Roe v. Wade potentially going down? John Phillips.
Well, anything is possible. It's all about the votes, though, when it comes down to whether or not the guy who's going to replace Anthony Kennedy actually gets in. And Democrats are putting huge amounts of pressure on their incumbent senators to vote against them. The people that this puts on the hot seat, the people that this makes life very difficult for, are red state Democrats who are running for re-election. What does Joe Manchin do? What does Heidi Heitkamp do? What does Donnelly from Indiana do when they're forced to vote against this nominee who their constituents want, or vote for him and upset the resistance?
Giselle, what do you think? Are you afraid right now? A lot of people on the Democratic side are really scared.
We should be scared. This is a huge, titanic blow to everything we fought for, especially right now during the Me Too women's rights era. We have immigrant rights that are under attack. We have anything that's diverse. Our unions were just attacked this past week. There's so many jolts to the Democratic Party, and this is a titanic one. And what can we do about it? We have to put pressure on our senators, regardless whether in red states or not, and we have to vote. There's no apathy right now that is even remotely acceptable. The real threat is much larger, which is this totalitarian, autocratic, remaking of our entire democracy. And this is just one more evolutionary big step toward a fascist regime.
Do you agree?
No. I don't think it's totalitarian when you have a Democratic election. Trump won. You have majorities of Republicans in Senate and the House. They won legitimately. Everybody won fair and square. I mean, probably half the country hates abortion. They didn't even want to hear it discussed. The whole idea of it makes them, upset.
That is
so
not
I don't
true.
think
This is a huge pillar of the Democratic movement, as you know. And
the Democratic movement, but there's a lot of people who aren't Democrats in this country.
Well, there are a
who
lot
don't
of Republicans also who are in favor of pro-choice because they don't want the government deciding for us what we should do with our bodies. And there's a huge surge of women's power now that will not want this to happen. Yes, I agree with you.
If that's important enough, they would vote. And then things would change. You would get different Supreme Court justices. You would get different laws. That Roe v. Wade was always in a gray area. There's obviously nothing in the Constitution specifically about abortion. Mm-hmm. What they did is they attached it to this right of privacy. So everybody knows it was kind of a wobbler in terms of its legality constitutionally.
But
and it was
only
a matter
for all these years.
It survived, yeah, and partly that's why I don't agree with what Jeffrey Toobin says, that it's guaranteed in 18 months it's going to go down. Because look how many Republican presidents and Supreme Court nominees we had that they thought were so conservative, and those nominees always seem to betray the president on that issue.
This is a very different time. Right now, it used to be that we had three very distinct branches of government. Right now, the judiciary is supposed to be an independent branch from any politicization. And right now, it's becoming extremely partisan, which is very, very dangerous. And I disagree with you wholeheartedly. There are Republicans and there are Democrats and independents who desperately want and care that Roe versus Wade is kept in place.
But on both sides.
And John,
judges don't always vote with the person who nominated them. I mean, look at Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch has left the reservation on any number of subjects. Look at Justice Roberts, who voted to save Obamacare. Just because he was nominated by a Republican doesn't necessarily mean that vote is not locked down.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We'll be back with more in our panel right after this.
I miss my baby and I miss my fun. I bought the law and the law won. I bought the law.
Welcome back with our panel. KFI's John Kobylt, journalist Giselle Fernandez, KABC Radio's John Phillips. Another big issue, the issue of immigration, which could end up at the Supreme Court as well. We see these family separations happening. The president put an executive order out there saying we don't want family separation anymore, but there hasn't been specifics about how to actually do that. We still see a lot of families separated. I know, Giselle, this is an incredibly important issue for you.
This is a total demonization of the immigrant in this country, and it's a travesty, and it's a crisis in morality for this nation. And we've demonized mothers and children who come here. Why do they come here? It's not immigrants. They're refugees. They're fleeing Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. Why? Because of our involvement in the 80s, and they have gangs that were built here in Los Angeles and returned there, and these people are fleeing for their lives. As a mother, and I am a mother of a Guatemalan child I adopted from there. This is a country in absolute civil war and has been, and they have the worst murder rates in all of the world. They have a constitutional right to present themselves legally as they do and apply for asylum. It's guaranteed by our decree and our Constitution. This is his core issue. As you said earlier, immigration, demonize the immigrant, the foreigner, because it rallies up his racist white base.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that, but I did. I'm happy to do so.
Well, that you said. How many do we let in? We've got to agree on a number here.
I'd love to have that discussion as opposed to making all these mothers and children in cages seem like criminals.
Well, we've got too many coming in too fast at once.
Why?
There's no practical way to handle this. And by the way, I disagree on the asylum. Thomas Homan, who's the acting director of ICE, says 80% of these asylum cases turn out to be frivolous. They're not really asylum stories. There are some asylum stories that you can attach to and make a very emotional case for.
I think we have to be very careful.
A lot of the asylum stories are
sorry,
nonsense.
you have to be very careful when you start spouting facts. As we've learned, there's so much fake news and a manipulation and mythology of these statistics. The bottom line is thousands of these people come. A very small percentage are criminals or come to do any harm to this country.
It's not our responsibility
It
to take care
certainly
of.
is our responsibility.
No, it's not
We are
mine.
the greatest nation in the world, and we can
shouldn't
have
be
more
that
compassion.
Great. No,
We're not that great
I'm not
right
interested in being that great. I don't want to take on the world's problems. They need to fix that in their
country. We help cause those
country.
problems by absolutely messing with their elections and their countries, and
the
we're paying the
American
price for
people
it
do
now.
Let's get John
Our
in there.
A
government
lot
did
of
under
this
Reagan.
is driven by partisanship and Trump derangement syndrome, because if you're a country, you have immigration laws, you have to enforce them. President Obama enforced them. President Obama, among other things, he paid off the Mexicans to do a lot of our dirty work. The Border Patrol in Mexico was militarized under the Obama administration because he thought that was a more prudent use of our resources. These facilities that we're seeing on TV didn't just pop up in the Trump administration. They were built and they pre-existed Donald Trump's election to the presidency. And suddenly, just now, everyone has a problem with what President Trump is doing, and they're saying he's motivated by racism.
Was there not a
Because he's
change on the
created
policy? The policy
Yes.
itself, the policy
Yes.
of family separation, is different
He's
under the
exactly
Trump
what are you gonna
administration.
What are you going to do? If you've got a family
But
coming
will you
in,
not acknowledge that the policy of family separation is different?
People were arrested under President Obama as felons. If they came a second time illegally, they were arrested with misdemeanors. They were put in these facilities. Sometimes they were jailed together. Sometimes they were jailed apart. There's nothing that's going on right now outside of zero tolerance
That's true.
that didn't exist before.
It's true, and President Obama, who was criticized for being the deporter in chief, and these separations, and by the way, gone long on before Obama. They've gone on since the days of slavery. We took children away from their parents.
Wait, hold on. Any
But
president has to enforce the border. Can we agree on that?
He has
we
to enforce the
can't
border,
have
but
there's billions of people that want to come here.
We have let people come here for guest worker programs when it has benefited our businesses, and then we demonize them when we need to kick them out.
To the family separation thing. Family comes over the border. The U.S. government has conflicting choices because of the way the law is. Either you arrest the parents, and then you can only keep the kids for 20 days, or you separate the two. Now,
you don't separate families
ever. But you can't hold the kids for more than 20 days. So what do?
You know,
you have to rewrite the law.
I'd rather have bipartisan, real coming together to discuss exactly
There's no such thing.
How we create a reformed immigration and refugee policy that actually takes these situations into account. We got a lot of smart people in this country. We're a compassionate nation.
We have a lot of idiot politicians.
We have a lot.
That's what we have.
I think we can agree.
The smart people don't run for office.
We can agree on both of those things. Okay, well, it's been kind of a tense show so far, so let's have a little bit of fun. Coming up next, the big question of the week: is LeBron James about to be a Laker? Is he going to be saying, "I love LA"? We know he's already moving here. The answer to that, hopefully, we come back.
I love LA.
The proposals have already begun. You see it right there. That was tweeted out by ESPN today. Question is, who is going to win LeBron's heart? Will it be the Lakers? He's now officially a free agent. He's not going to be on The Bachelor next year, by the way. He's happily married. To our panel, the big question: will LeBron James be a Laker this time next week? John.
If he's got a house in Brentwood, I've heard multiple times that he's looking at schools for his kids, local schools. So that's what you follow. So I say yes.
I say absolutely, and there's one huge reason why, and that is Magic Johnson. They're good friends, and he promised to transform the team, and what better way to do it?
Yeah.
If a player is past his prime and comes to Los Angeles to play, wouldn't he be playing for the Clippers?
He's not past his prime. He's
still
arguably
the
the
best
best
player
player
in
in
the
the
So let's talk-
world. He would
Yeah.
do so much to unify Los Angeles, bring so much economy, and he'd bring so much spirit, and he transcends basketball.
God, it brought you two together. So that's something. Let's end there.
gonna be going to a
Let's
Laker game
also end
next
with
year.
this. We want to play some music for you, and it is all about this. You hear that? It's Light Us Up, because the man who lights us up every week is Dave Shirley, our lighting director. We've always thought he's the best in the business. We're not the only ones. He won the Emmy this week for outstanding lighting. Congrats to Dave. We're proud to call you a teammate. Thanks for making us look so good every week. And thanks to the entire crew behind the scenes. We're best people. That's all for this week. Thanks so much for watching The Issue Is. Have a great one. There's some good lighting.